Ben Hartsock joins us right now. Ben is from Chillicothe, Ohio. He is the same age that I am, although he's a little older than me by a few months. And quite the decorated resume. Was a national champion at Ohio State, drafted in the third round by the Indianapolis Colts, played with the Colts, Titans, Falcons, Jets, Panthers, and Patriots. And now he talks on Sirius XM satellite radio and does some television and radio games for ESPN as well. Benjamin, what's up?
Doing well. You know, I appreciate you painting what many would describe as a very mediocre career in a positive light, right? Like, I appreciate that. What
I have learned about you, Ben, is that you're a man of many interests. And as somebody who can relate to that, I applaud that. You like and know about motorhomes. You're a truck guy, but you're also a car guy. You like the outdoors, big on family stuff. I dig this. A lot of interest for you, especially in semi-retirement, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, man. Variety is the spice of life. One of my great joys since getting out of the world of football is learning about every part of the country's got its own cultural norms. Every sport has its own cultural norms. I got into mountain biking, and cyclists are like sickos, and guys that drive cars have a certain set of like acceptable practices. I've talked to you about my time in the Grove and how influential, impactful that was to me to see that cultural experience. It really is one of my great passions in life is learning about those different things.
All right, we're going to get into some college football stuff. I think there's interesting topics to get into, like a ton of interesting topics. But I have to ask you about something that you did yesterday. You were telling me about this. So you like cars, you like fast cars, but only in controlled environments. You told me yesterday was a track day. How did that go?
Yeah, so a few years ago, I grew up riding dirt bikes. A car was too far, like, unattainable, but I could find my way to get a dirt bike. Grew up on a farm. But I found out a couple years ago that cars, a fast car is something I really enjoyed. So I got a Mustang, and I got into track days. I got into track days because every time I was out driving my fun Mustang, every time I'd crest a hill, I would think there's going to be a cop, I'm going to get a ticket, I'm going to lose my license, and I just was frustrated by that. So they said, hey, take it to a track day, and it is like you say, a semi-controlled environment where I can stand on the throttle as much as I want, and I've learned through a couple of track day events, the greatest limiting factor isn't the tires, it's not the steering, it's not the suspension. It's me. I am the limiting factor, and I can prove that because I am passed regularly. I've been passed by a Honda Civic. I was passed by a Chevy Cobalt.
No.
I'll defend myself by saying the Cobalt was it was an SS, but they stopped making those in 2010. So it's a humbling experience that I've got 500 horsepower under the hood, yet I'm getting run away by a subcompact.
How fast did you go in your Mustang with 500 horsepower under the hood yesterday?
Yeah, my goal was to break my personal record of 142. I can confirm I did not break my goal. The first session of the season, this is my first track event of 2022, it's probably a little bit, you don't go out saying you're going to break your PR in the 100-meter dash when the first day you're training of the season. So I only got to 135 yesterday, but it was plenty fast for me.
There you go. So let's switch gears and talk a little NIL and transfer portal. I've listened to you on Sirius XM with other co-hosts along the way, and I feel like your perspective is a little bit different on this. So I want to kind of open the floor for you, and not, I mean, you don't have to opine for 20 minutes here, but just when you hear name, image, and likeness, players getting paid, transfer portal, where we are in college football, what's kind of a big picture take for you with where we are right now?
We are completely at a crossroads, Richard. I mean, I can't. That may sound like hyperbole, but we are at a true fork in the road moment in college athletics because with the last summer's flipping of the switch of the instant eligibility and transfer portal and flipping the switch for NIL that has turned into basically weaponized recruiting, college football is certainly not looking like what I played and what we grew up watching. Now, it'd be very easy to say it's just another old guy claiming about how it was better back in the old days. But I recognize that on the surface, that something like a player being able to move from one player to another, or one school to another, should seem like a no-brainer. But the statistics indicate that it's not so simple. When we think transfer portal, we think Joe Burrow, we think Jalen Hurts, we think any of the success stories, Kyler Murray. But the reality is, the cold hard facts of the transfer portal are that 4 out of 10 FBS football players, Power 5 or Group of 5 football players that have a scholarship, when they put their name in the portal, 4 out of 10 don't end up with a scholarship wherever they go, if they go anywhere. So that is a giant failure in that system, that 4 out of 10 players effectively end their academic and athletic career by placing their name in the portal. So I look at that and say, gosh, I don't know that that's as much of a home run as we think it is. The reality is with the portal, it's worked for the elite, and it will always work for the elite. And the other thing about the portal, Richard, is it's not like you couldn't transfer before the quote-unquote portal existed 2 years ago. It's just that it wasn't like an app, a tender, site where you can put yourself out there for more seekers and universities to find you. So that switch has flipped, and every player that's disgruntled now has a ripcord, an easy way out. Now, every circumstance is unique, and there are times where players needed to get away, but every player thinks I'm Joe Burrow, and the reality is not everybody is Joe Burrow. So that's transfer portal. Name, image, likeness is a mess, and again, it flies in the face of my philosophical beliefs about capitalism and letting the market dictate all of those kinds of things. A kid being able to earn what he's due seems like an absolute no-brainer.
Right.
But I talk about this point a lot, saying that if we don't have what are we trying to fix, we're not going to hit anything. What are we trying to accomplish? If we're just trying to get guys paid, here's the cold, hard reality. There's only about 2% of college football players that are truly marketable. That's like and it's probably less than that. And that's why when you see the NIL space, it's been an abject failure for the top guys. The guys that were on the magazine covers last year, Spencer Rattler and Graham Mertz and DJ Uiagalelei, those guys were all complete disasters in the name, image, likeness. So the average transaction for name, image, likeness is around $900. Now, I'm not explaining that away. You hand me $900, I'll be glad and shake your hand. But it's not this giant windfall that everybody expected it to be for every player that's wearing an Ole Miss uniform, Mississippi State uniform, or an Alabama uniform. That's just not the case. But when we hear these numbers about million-dollar deals, Jordan Addison, the Blitnikoff winner, leaving Pitt to go to USC for $3 million. There's a kid that's being recruited and committed to Tennessee that's got a $8 million deal, $2 million a year every year during his four-year commitment. That's not true NIL. That's not true market capitalism. That is weaponized recruiting. That is what, before the switch was flipped last summer, what was illegal, and now it's just become above board. And all that, listen, it's good for Jordan Addison. It's good for Nico. I'm calling him Nico Pajama Pants because I haven't learned how to say his name yet. He's started a brand of pajama pants. That's his brand. It's good for those guys, and I don't blame them because they're kids. I'm upset with the adults that teed this up, because who's going to win in this? The ones with the money. Alabama, my alma mater, Ohio State, Tennessee's got a ton of money, Texas has got a ton of money. Like that. Those are it's going to hurt places like Purdue. It's going to hurt places like NC State. It's going to hurt the working class, and it's going to further spread college athletics, one of the biggest problem we have in college athletics that nobody's addressing is parity, and it's getting worse.
Hold that thought for a second. I got some questions I want to ask now that you kind of laid the platform out. We'll talk about that when we former Ohio State and NFL tight end with a number of different teams and works at SiriusXM and also for ESPN and occasionally the SEC Network. Had a couple of SEC Network TV games last year. Got stuck with some guy named Richard for one of those. Ben, you laid out a lot there. And I kind of gave you the forum to do that, and appreciate you kind of spelling that out. It's a take that's different from a lot of people that cover college football and are in and around this kind of media environment on a day-to-day basis. Name, image, and likeness. You talked about kind of some capitalist principles. The idea of players getting something for their marketability. You're for that, right? It's just kind of the pay-for-play aspect. And I ask that because there's this element of, like, the toothpaste is out of the tube, and I don't know how you put it back in. We've got Greg Sankey and George Kliavkoff meeting with Congress and trying to convince them to put a bill in place that will put some guardrails on this, stuff that should have been done on the front end.
Yeah, the concept of name, image, likeness of a guy literally earning for doing tweets or appearances, it seems simple, but the reality is that it's been small potatoes compared to the pay-for-play that is like the example of Jordan Addison, the Blitnikoff winner from Pitt, is to me so concerning because you say, here's Pitt, that's a working class program that had everything go right last year. They won the ACC championship. They got the best wide receiver in college football, the Blitnikoff Award, and their quarterback was drafted in the first round. So you should look at that and say, this is an absolute home run for Pitt. But the reality is it's not enough because when USC can offer you $3 million and a house, it just shows me that in however the dust settles of the new world order of what, Sankey and Kliavkoff are doing, of what college football is going to look like, Pitt doesn't make the cut. And they just won a Power 5 championship of their conference. So I don't know how that's good because here's the thing. Fans are hostages right now. If you're a Pitt fan, you have to think, well, we can't even keep Jordan Addison. We've got to buy more gear. We've got to get our collective going more. I've got to donate, not just for my tickets or my PSL, whatever. You're a hostage. That to me is kind of that fundamental change of college athletics. That I think part of the attraction to college are the universities that we either went to or support. There's an element of they're one of us. These players are one of us. And we're glad to have them during this developmental process they go through, and hopefully they make it to the NFL. But now college athletics, it's gone from college is a transformational time for most of us where we figure out who we are. We're not yet adults. We're still not kids. Like, it's a weird time. It's a transformational process that we love watching athletes go through as well. But now college is just a transactional process for college athletes. And I really, really just think that is just a sad state of affairs that we're allowing this. It's a capitalist pursuit, but it just muddies the experience. It's like the commercialization of Christmas. I still celebrate Christmas, but it's certainly harder to do when the muddiness comes in of the commercialization of it.
So Michael Borky asked me yesterday or a couple of days ago, he said, you are now Senator Richard Cross, and you are in charge of drafting some legislation. Let's assume that it's legislation that can actually be passed. What does it look like? What does that read like? And I thought I was ready to answer him, and I started to, and then I stopped. And then I started again, and I stopped, and I did not have a good answer. And so for those of us who, feel at least partially the way you do, what is the answer? If I'm making you the Senate majority leader and you're going to draft the legislation and you're going to have the votes to get it passed, what are you drafting?
Well, what I want, Richard, is honestly, I want it to stay what it was. And I give and people say, well, how could you? That's already been proven by the Supreme Court as unfit and it's only a matter of time. Well, I give the example of a residency with a doctor. Like in our society, doctor, if you're really good at college, you go to a good medical school, and if you're good at medical school, you get to be a resident. And residents are doctors. They're doing heart surgery. If we've been at a university hospital, we've had stitches and cuts done that were very important done by residents that don't get the money that real doctors get.
Right, they get paid, but it's not big money.
That's exactly right. And it's like, what that is, it's an apprenticeship that you learn how to be a real big-time doctor and hold someone's life in your hands, but you don't have the burden of malpractice insurance and running your own business and the tax implications and all of those things. I argue that college football and the ones that have professional outlets, that college football is the residency for players. That if you're good enough and if you're good in high school, you get to go to college. And if you're at college, if you can play in the big time, you'll make the big money like the doctors, the full-blown doctors do. If you can do well in college and learn how to deal with the pressure of playing in the Grove or playing football at Ole Miss on an important Saturday night, and if you're good enough, then you get launched into the NFL. So that's what I want. But that's again, I'm fighting the Alamo, and I'm backed up, and I'm just going to go down swinging. What do I think is actually plausible? You have to cut out the pay-for-play that is what NIL represents, and I honestly think you've got to enact rules that have bite. Meaning, if a booster is caught blatantly doing what we all knew was happening before NIL illegally, but now it's happening legally, that there's got to be consequences that you are banned from the university. You can't step foot on the campus, can't be around athletes, can't be around the stadium. You have to have consequences that bite. The only way to
enforce that, because the NCAA is just a ghost.
The NCAA is dead. There's no more NCAA. The NCAA with Mark Emmert stepping down and the constitutional convention that has been started, and basically each division is in charge of Division I, Division II, Division III in college athletics. That's what made up the NCAA. They've been charged with drafting their own rules and regulations for what works for them. And just to give a scope, the NCAA Division I, II, and III represent 460,000 student athletes in all sports across their country. So what comes next? Well, that's the most fascinating aspect of all of this is where do you make the cut? Of those 460,000 student athletes at the NCAA, there's really only, 10,000 that are making the lion's share of whatever it is, $10 billion a year that they bring in, just a number that I kind of pull out of that. Really, what's really happening is the ones that are making the money are deciding, who are we bringing with us, because we're cutting out a lot of it.
Well, and the crazy thing about that, Ben, I mean, you talk about the difference between Division I, II, and III, but if we're talking football only, you're talking about 120 Division I programs. Not only do you have a split about halfway down between Power 5 and Group of 5, you can make the argument that there's a cut line at about 40 or 50 schools within the Power 5.
There's only around this give or take. There's really only about 20 programs, Richard. There's really only about 20 programs in college football that are truly profitable. And so when you talk about conference realignment, what's going to happen with Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC, the logical next step, like the sequential step, would be to say, okay, we're going to cut out the Group of 5. They'll have their own separate version of college football. The Power 5 will continue under the structure of the college football playoff. Like, that's the next incremental step. Yeah. I argue that's a half measure. The true capitalist approach to this is to say, hey, we're going to take maybe 20, maybe 30, and it would probably be started by and led by the SEC and Greg Sankey, and they look at this
and the
say,
Big Ten.
Yeah. Did you hear me? I'm sorry?
No, I just said and the Big Ten. I mean, I would look the SEC and the Big Ten in together.
The Big Ten, right? But that's okay. That's right. The SEC and the Big Ten. But here's the thing: the Big Ten is about to renegotiate its media deal, and it's going to get about 80 to 90, maybe even $100 million per school on that new media deal.
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal. Illinois is not the same as Ohio State, but Illinois is going to get an equal share of that 80 to $100 million per year. That's that's over double what Clemson gets. Does Illinois deserve to be in the Big Ten just because it's been there since 1896? So when I look at this, I say I think the commissioners get together and they say, hey, Vanderbilt, you're not quite pulling it. You're only benefiting from the SEC's money because you've been around since the beginning. Illinois the same kind of way. So you take, again, the SEC has 7 of the 10 most profitable brands already in its conference.
Yeah.
You pluck Ohio State, you pluck Clemson, you pluck Michigan, you take Oregon, you take USC, and you
Ben,
that's the real true capitalist approach.
Hard break. You know how